Hi everyone, welcome to the Render Media vlog where we talk everything business and marketing. With me here today I have Michelle Samson from the City of Vaughan. She is the Economic Development Officer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having me.
So tell us, Michelle, how did you get started in economic development?
Okay, well, my journey in economic development goes all the way back to high school. My local volunteer economic development committee got a grant for a summer student and hired me to do some research on some local tourism assets. So that was my very brief introduction, but put it aside for a while. After high school, I went and did media. Did some programs in radio and TV, but eventually decided to get out of that. Decided to go back for a degree in geography. And what I found was I was taking these courses in development, economic geography, retail location, and one of my profs said, you should look at this master's program in economic development. And everything just sort of clicked and came together. So I applied, got in, took it, absolutely loved the program. And then I've been, touching economic development ever since.
That's a great story. Now, before we move on, let's talk more about that. I had no idea that you have a media background. So tell me, what was that like? And this is going to be the best interview we've had so far.
It's certainly not glamorous working in small town radio. So my program touched on print journalism, radio, and TV, but I decided to specialize in radio. I thought I was going to be a hotshot DJ, and then got my first job doing news in Huntsville, Ontario, at a small radio station there. And then hopped over to another small town radio station in Pembroke, Ontario, also doing news. I just found that it wasn't quite the fit that I was looking for. So that's why I decided to go back to school and take something completely different. But things come full circle, and I find I'm using that old knowledge in all sorts of interesting ways these days.
And now, Michelle, let's talk about that. So you decided to go back to school to do economic development. What was it about that was really intriguing to you?
Well, I think it comes from my experience growing up in a rural area of Nova Scotia. So, Nova Scotia, not doing so great economically. Sometimes does well, sometimes not so much. But, I grew up in a community that didn't have a whole lot of jobs, didn't have a whole lot of companies. A lot of kids would move out, after high school. And, it always struck me that, I really wanted people to be able to stay where they wanted. If they wanted to go off to school and, do the big city thing, then that was great and their prerogative. But if they wanted to stay but couldn't find a job, then, that's not a great place to be for an economy. So when I kind of came around to discovering economic development, it hit me as a way to help people find really good, meaningful work that they want to do, where they want to live, and having that match between them. So that's, for me, where my values towards economic development really comes from. Yeah.
Well, that's a really great perspective on how you got into the industry. Now let's talk about how you arrived at the wonderful City of Vaughan as the Economic Development Officer.
Sure, it took a little bit of a circuitous route after school. A lot of economic developers do work in municipalities, but I tried my hand at a few different kinds of employers first. So first I worked for the University of Waterloo's training program for economic developers, so I was working in professional development. Did a bit of economic development consulting, so a little bit of private sector. Then I went and worked for the Ontario Ministry of International Trade. But all of these things, while I learned a lot from them, when this job posting came up, it really spoke to me and it called to me. And so I applied, and I'm so glad that they hired me because it's been such a really good fit, and I feel so much closer to the ground. I get to really work with the businesses. I really get to have an impact with my projects, and I really, really like being able to have that relationship on the ground and to be able to have that impact with people in the community.
Well, you certainly sound like the right fit, and you sound like you're there for all the right reasons. Let's talk more about what you do at the City of Vaughan in economic development and how that ties to marketing and businesses within the community.
Sure. So maybe I'll start with a little bit of an overview of what our department looks like. So I'm part of the Economic and Cultural Development Department, and we have 4 units. So the first is business development, which is what I'm part of, and what we do is we help Vaughan businesses to grow and expand and to thrive. We also help new companies set up in Vaughan. We also have a small business and entrepreneurship unit and team, and they mostly work with the budding entrepreneurs, the startups, people in the innovation space. We also have people in creative and cultural development, and they work on things like public art and cultural events and things like that. And then finally we have a partnerships and sponsorships unit, and what they do is look for non-tax revenue sources for the city. So making sure that we can continue to deliver great programs and initiatives without always relying on the tax base. So that's our department in a nutshell. My portfolio specifically is pretty marketing heavy. So I'm responsible for our economic development marketing citywide, but a big part of my portfolio is the Vaughan Metropolitan Centre. So anything marketing and profiling that, and any of the the businesses that are already within it or bringing in new businesses, that's all things that I work towards. I also support office and retail across the city. So anybody in those kinds of sectors, if they're looking for, I kind of like to call myself a business concierge. So if they need any kind of help, they want some connections or they want some help navigating how the city works, they can reach out to me and I can guide them through that process and help them out.
And now with regards to the VMC, the Vaughan Metropolitan Centre, that's also a very interesting project.
So much fun to work on.
I bet it is. Let's talk about that a bit. Like, tell me, what are some of the initiatives you currently have in place, and how do you come to arrive at those sort of initiatives and objectives for the VMC?
Sure. Well, as far as how we arrive to that, a big part of that is we listen. That's the short answer. Across my whole team and myself in the VMC, I try to spend a lot of time talking to businesses, to our partners, to the landowners in the VMC, to almost anybody that's walking through there or living there. I try to gather as much information as I can, and that's how we really learn what the challenges are, what the gaps are, what the opportunities are. We across the board, my whole team, we also keep an eye on research, trends. We see what our peers in other cities are doing, and we roll all of that in and try to do a really made in Vaughan kind of solution to these kinds of problems. Actually, just a quick note too, as far as the listening, this year we really reached out a lot. We did a phone survey to businesses across Vaughan to learn what their challenges are, where they think we should be headed. We also did a lot of focus groups and roundtables to really listen and get that feedback of where we should be going and what's needed in Vaughan. So that's how the sort of setup for what we do. More specifically, in my case, a lot of what I do is marketing. So for the VMC, one of the challenges that we'd heard from our stakeholders was that the residential side has been absolutely fantastic, through the roof, a lot of development there. But now we need to balance it out and really look at the office development side, the retail, all of those fun things that help to make it feel more like a community. So what I'm doing is I'm laser focused and targeting people in the business and commercial real estate communities to try and just profile the VMC, let them know what it is, that it exists, that our subway is open, that it links to Union Station in 45 minutes, all these kinds of talking points to get them thinking about maybe locating here. So that when our landlords are going out and pitching to tenants, hopefully they have a head start. They already know all the exciting things that are happening in the VMC, and makes their job easier.
That's amazing. You certainly have a lot on the go. So let's talk now about the process involved when you have these objectives and now you need to meet these objectives with marketing initiatives. How do you determine what are those, executable actions through marketing? What are those sort of deliverables, and how do you come to determine what that is?
Okay, so that's a big question. So I just started with the city in last August. So part of it was, digging back into, we've had a lot of studies done. We've had, we'll get consultants every once in a while to advise us and do some research and things like that. But, sometimes it's just trial and error to some degree. So, I kind of came in, created a marketing plan. We knew that we wanted to talk to the business and the commercial real estate community. So we said, how do we reach them? So, we started going to events, among, say, like NAOP and Cornet, for example, are two organizations that represent commercial real estate community and the corporate real estate community. So we said, how can we get out in front of these guys, to make a really big splash. We also just looked at the gaps in our collateral, so we said, okay, the website is doing good, but we need some print pieces to be able to to bring in for people who like that more tangible kind of approach to getting their information. We talked to our landowners and they said, we're having we'd really like to tell the softer side of the VMC and say, what's the quality of life like? What's coming on that side? What makes you want to have that live-work balance and live there? So we pulled that kind of information together and pulled a new brochure on that. Another problem was that people maybe had heard about the VMC but didn't quite get where it was in the whole process of things. So at that point, we developed a 360-degree virtual reality video where we plunk you down in the middle of Transit Square, and you get to actually look around and say, oh, this is interesting. This is what it looks like. You can have your cell phone with YouTube and move it around and really get that feel of what it looks like. So yeah, so it's a bit of an organic process sometimes, and then we're seeing what resonates and what's needed, and that's where we go with it.
It sounds like you're definitely listening to the community, for starters, and it sounds like you're really reflecting a lot of what our community needs and what people are looking for in the city of Vaughan. So that's great to hear.
That's what we hope to do anyway.
And now, what can we look out for in the future of economic development in the city of Vaughan?
Okay, well, we've got some, we're always working on something. We're always, trying to come up with, keep our previous initiatives going, but also come up with new things that fill in those gaps. But some of the exciting things coming up in the very near future, the department just worked to create a new destination management organization. So what that is we've started collecting a hotel tax from hotel rooms in Vaughan, and that money is going towards creating this new organization that's going to start marketing and doing business development for the tourism sector in Vaughan. So we're hoping to start to build that. So that DMO is going to start ramping up and get some new hires throughout this year. We've also been working on some feasibility studies, one for a performing and cultural arts center in the VMC, seeing what that might look like, if it would work, how the operation structure would be. We're also doing a study on the lands around the Mackenzie Vaughan Hospital to create sort of a health precinct and maybe build up the business community around that and relate it to health. We're also doing some exciting things regarding our business expo, the Vaughan Business Expo. So that's one of our big showpiece events for the year. This year it brought in 400 or 500 people from across Vaughan and beyond in the business community. And it's typically a trade show, but what we're doing this year is we're theming it. So we're going to have different zones to help people who are coming to be able to find the connections that they need to make. So instead of sort of setting them out and bring a lot of people in, we're going to make sure that people can find the people that are relevant for connections for them. So if I may do a shameless plug, the best way to keep on top of everything that we're doing as a department and to get updates on what's going on across the Vaughan economy as a whole is to subscribe to our newsletter, the Vaughan Economic Monitor, and I can make sure that you get the link to that to be able to share out there.
Absolutely, you heard it here, guys. Subscribe to the Vaughan
Economic Monitor.
And we will put the link in our comments so you can all follow at home. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on and really sharing your insight on how economic development is progressing at the City of Vaughan.
Thank you so much. We're here to help the business community, so I encourage anybody to reach out.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Tune in next time, guys.